He stood there, holding a bouquet of her favorite lilies, a hopeful smile gracing his lips. His name was Mark, and for the past 10 years, Sarah had been his entire world. Lately, though, his world had felt distant. The easy laughter that used to fill their home had been replaced by a quiet tension. The comfortable silences now felt heavy with unspoken words. Mark blamed himself. His new promotion at work had consumed him, turning late nights at the office into a regular occurrence. He'd been chasing a future for them, but in the process, he was losing their present. So, he decided to fix it. This bouquet was just the beginning. He had a whole plan laid out, a surprise dinner reservation at the Italian place where they had their first date, a weekend getaway to the cabin where he proposed, a promise to leave work at 5 every single day. He was ready to rebuild their love, brick by painful brick if he had to. He just wanted his Sarah back. When she walked through the door, her eyes barely registered the flowers in his hand. She offered a weak, tired smile. "It's lilies." "They're nice," she said, her voice lacking its usual warmth. She placed her bag on the chair and immediately started scrolling through her phone. Mark's heart sank a little, but he pushed the feeling aside. This was just a rough patch. He would fix it. "I made a reservation for us tonight," he said, trying to sound cheerful. "Remember Luigi's? It's just like old times." Sarah looked up from her phone, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Panic? Guilt? He couldn't tell. "Oh, Mark, I can't tonight. I have that late meeting with the new client. I told you about it, remember?" He didn't remember. In fact, he was sure she hadn't mentioned it at all. But he didn't want to argue. "Okay, no problem," he said, his smile feeling a little more forced. "You can go another time." She nodded, already absorbed back into her phone, and a small, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips as she typed. It wasn't a smile for him. The next few weeks were a painful loop of Mark's efforts and Sarah's excuses. The weekend trip was canceled because of a work emergency. Movie nights were cut short by urgent phone calls. Every attempt he made to connect was met with a polite but firm wall. He started to notice other things too. She guarded her phone like a fortress, its screen always angled away from him. She started wearing a new perfume, one he'd never smelled before, and he asked about it. She just shrugged and said a coworker had given her a sample. The loneliness was crushing. He was married, yet he felt more alone than ever. He'd walk into a room and she'd quickly end a phone call, whispering, "I'll call you back." She started staying out later and later, her explanations becoming more and more vague. "Just out with the girls," she'd say, but her friends never seemed to know about these outings. When Mark casually asked, he was trying to rebuild a home, but it felt like he was the only one holding the hammer. She was quietly dismantling the foundation. One evening, desperate for a sign, any sign that she still cared, he found an old photo album. It was from their honeymoon in Greece. Sat on the couch, flipping through the pages, a bittersweet ache in his chest. There they were, young, carefree, so blindingly in love. He remembered the feel of her hand in his as they walked along the white sandy beaches, the sound of her laughter as he'd tried to speak Greek to a local vendor. Where had that woman gone? He heard her key in the lock. He quickly closed the album, not wanting her to see him looking so sentimental and weak. When she came in, he tried again.
"Hey, I was just thinking maybe we could plan a trip. Go back to Greece even."
Sarah paused, her handbag slipping from her shoulder. She looked at him, and for the first time in months, her mask of indifference cracked. He saw a flash of real emotion, but it wasn't love. It was pity. "Mark," she said, her voice soft, but the words were like daggers. "We need to talk," and in that moment, he knew. He knew before she said a single word. He knew that all his efforts, all his plans, all his hope had been for nothing. He had been trying to rebuild their love, not knowing she'd already given it away. She'd built a new home for her heart, and he wasn't invited. The conversation that followed was a blur of tears and confessions. His name was Alex. He was a colleague from her late-night meetings. It had been going on for 6 months. 6 months. For 6 months, while Mark was working late to build a future for them, she was building a future with someone else. While he was buying flowers and planning romantic dinners, she was receiving secret texts and going on dates. The pieces all clicked into place, each one a fresh wave of agony. The protected phone, the new perfume, the nights out with the girls, it was all a lie. He asked her why. The one question that burned in his soul. Her answer was simple and devastating. I fell out of love with you, Mark. It just faded. With Alex, it's exciting. It's new. It was as if their 10 years together, their entire history was nothing more than an old movie she'd gotten bored of watching. She didn't scream or yell. She just stated it as a fact, as if discussing the weather. That's what hurt the most. The cold, clinical detachment. Mark didn't beg or plead. A strange sense of calm washed over him. The fight had gone out of him. Can't force someone to love you. Can't rebuild a home with someone who has already moved out. He simply nodded. All the lilies he'd bought a few weeks ago had long since wilted in their vase. A perfect metaphor for his marriage. He had tried to bring something back to life that was already gone. In the days that followed, as they navigated the painful logistics of separating, Mark felt a profound sadness, but also a sliver of relief. The constant anxiety, the feeling of walking on eggshells, the desperate need for her approval was all gone. The truth, as brutal as it was, had set him free. He realized he hadn't been fighting for their love. He had been fighting for a memory, a ghost of what they once were. He started focusing on himself. He reconnected with old friends he had neglected. He went to the gym. He started that woodworking project he'd always talked about, but never had time for. Slowly, he began to rebuild his own life, a life that wasn't dependent on someone else's affection. He learned that his happiness didn't reside in another person's heart. It had to be cultivated within his own. One day, months later, he was at a coffee shop, sketching a design for a new bookshelf. He was so engrossed he didn't notice the woman who sat down at the table next to him until she spoke. "That's a really beautiful drawing," she said with a genuine warm smile. He looked up, and for the first time in a very long time, he smiled back, a real unforced smile. He wasn't rebuilding something old, he was starting to build something new. He didn't know where this new path would lead, but he knew one thing for sure. He was the only architect he needed. He had finally laid a new foundation, one built on self-respect and the promise of a future that was entirely his own. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. See you in the next one.